The chandeliers above us shimmered with quiet authority, casting fractured light across crystal glasses and polished silverware. Everything about the restaurant whispered exclusivity, from the marble floors to the low, controlled voices of people who never had to raise them. This was not a place you simply walked into. This was a place you were expected to belong. And apparently, I didn't. Are you sure we're in the right place? My mother's voice cut through the air, hushed, yet sharp enough to draw attention. She glanced around with visible discomfort, her fingers tightening around her handbag as though it might anchor her to something familiar. My father leaned closer, his tone low but unmistakably irritated. This restaurant is way above your budget. There it was. Not concern, not curiosity. A quiet, deliberate humiliation. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself before responding. I made the reservation, Dad. That's not what I asked, he replied, adjusting his cufflinks. I asked if you can afford it. Before I could answer, my brother let out a short laugh. Not loud, but calculated. Oh, this should be interesting, Daniel muttered, leaning back in his chair. Are we about to witness financial suicide, or just another one of your big ideas? His wife smirked beside him, pretending to study the menu, though her attention never really left me. This place doesn't even list prices online, she added lightly. That's usually a sign. Yes, Daniel said, raising an eyebrow. A sign that you shouldn't be here unless you belong. The words lingered. Heavy. Intentional. I didn't react. Not outwardly. But something inside me shifted. I invited you here, I said calmly. The least you can do is sit down and enjoy the evening. My mother leaned in, her voice soft, but laced with disapproval. We don't need your pocket change. That one landed. It always did. Because it wasn't about money. It was about what they believed I didn't have. Stability. Success. Worth. My father folded his napkin with precise, almost surgical movements. This isn't a joke, he said. This is a $40 million establishment. He let that number sit in the air, as if it alone should force reality back into place. You don't just walk into places like this and pretend. I held his gaze. I'm not pretending. Daniel chuckled again, shaking his head. You've always had this imagination, he said. Big dreams, vague plans, no real execution. That's not fair, my mother added quickly, though her tone lacked conviction. She's just figuring things out. Figuring things out. At 29. After years of silence. After walking away from everything they understood. Yes, that was the narrative they preferred. Simple. Comfortable. Wrong. A waiter approached just then, composed and impeccably dressed. Good evening, he said smoothly. May I start you off with something to drink? My father didn't even look at him. Just water, he said dismissively. The waiter nodded, then turned to me. And for you, ma'am? There was a brief pause. A moment where the entire table seemed to hold its breath, waiting for me to hesitate. To falter. To confirm their assumptions. I didn't. The usual, I said. The waiter inclined his head slightly. Of course. And just like that, he walked away. Daniel frowned. The usual, he repeated. Since when do you have a usual in a place like this? I didn't answer. Because the answer wasn't for him. Not yet. The room around us continued its quiet rhythm. Glasses clinking, conversations flowing, deals being made in low voices behind carefully neutral expressions. This was a world built on perception. On power. On quiet recognition. And my family still saw me as an outsider. Look, my father said after a moment, his tone softening slightly, though the condescension remained. If you're trying to prove something, this isn't the way. I'm not trying to prove anything. Then what is this? Daniel pressed. I glanced around the room once more. At the staff. At the layout. At the subtle details no one else at the table seemed to notice. Then I looked back at them. It's dinner. That only made it worse. Because to them, it wasn't just dinner. It was a statement they didn't believe I had the right to make. My mother sighed quietly. You could have chosen somewhere simpler, she said. Somewhere more appropriate. Appropriate. Another word that translated easily. Know your place. I leaned back slightly in my chair, completely at ease now. Because moments like this, they always followed the same pattern. Doubt. Dismissal. Discomfort. And then, a shift. A subtle one. Almost invisible. But powerful enough to change everything. The waiter returned, placing a glass gently in front of me. Not water. A specific drink. Prepared exactly the way I liked it. No questions asked. No hesitation. Just quiet recognition. My father noticed. His brows furrowed slightly. You've been here before? Yes. How many times? Daniel asked quickly. Enough. That answer didn't satisfy them. If anything, it unsettled them more. Because for the first time that evening, their certainty began to crack. And they didn't like that. Not at all. Minutes passed. Menus closed. Orders placed. Tension still thick in the air. Then, something changed. A subtle shift near the entrance. Staff members straightened. Conversations paused, just for a second. The kind of reaction that doesn't happen for just anyone. My father noticed it first. "What's going on?" he murmured. Daniel turned slightly in his seat. "Looks like someone important just walked in." Footsteps approached. Measured. Confident. Deliberate. And then, they stopped. Right beside our table. The presence beside our table did not demand attention. It commanded it. A man in his early 50s stood there, composed, immaculately dressed, the kind of presence that quietly redefined the atmosphere around him. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. The restaurant manager. No, more than that. The owner. My father straightened almost instantly, his entire demeanor shifting with practiced instinct. Respect, where moments ago there had been judgment. "Good evening," the man said, his voice calm, polished, controlled. "I trust everything is to your satisfaction." For a brief moment, no one spoke. Because his attention was not on my father. Not on Daniel. Not on anyone else at the table. It was on me. Exclusively. I met his gaze, offering a small, composed nod. "Everything is perfect. Thank you." A faint smile touched his lips. The kind reserved for familiarity, not formality. "I'm relieved to hear that," he replied. "We always ensure our most valued guests are well taken care of." Daniel blinked. "Once. Twice. Valued guests?" he echoed, almost under his breath. The owner continued, still addressing me. "I apologize for not greeting you earlier. I wasn't informed of your arrival until just now." "That's all right," I said smoothly. "I prefer it that way." "Of course," he replied. "Discretion as always." Discretion. The word lingered like a quiet revelation. My mother shifted in her seat, visibly unsettled now. I'm sorry," she interjected awkwardly, forcing a polite smile. "You must have us confused with someone else." The owner turned to her slowly. Measured. Respectful. But certain. "There is no confusion," he said. "Your daughter is one of our most distinguished patrons." Silence. Complete. Absolute. Daniel let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Okay, wait," he said, leaning forward. "Are we doing some kind of performance here?" No one responded. Because this wasn't theater. This was reality, finally catching up. My father cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of a situation that had already slipped far beyond him. "How exactly do you know her?" he asked, his tone careful now. The owner's expression remained neutral. "Professionally," he replied. "And personally to a degree." He paused briefly. Then added, "She has been instrumental in several strategic developments related to this establishment." That was enough. More than enough. But Daniel wasn't ready to accept it. "Strategic developments?" he repeated. "She works from a laptop in her apartment." The words came out sharper than he intended. Desperation, wrapped in sarcasm. I didn't react. The owner, however, did. He turned his gaze toward Daniel, calm but precise. "With respect," he said, "what she does extends far beyond what is visible." That landed. Hard. Because it dismantled the illusion they had been clinging to all evening. My mother looked at me again, her voice quieter now. "Sarah, what is he talking about?" I took a slow breath. Not because I was nervous, but because this moment had been inevitable. "I told you," I said simply. "You just didn't believe me." The owner stepped slightly closer, his presence now anchoring the truth in place. "If I may clarify," he said, addressing the table as a whole, "your daughter is not simply a guest here." Another pause. Another shift in the room. "She is a stakeholder." My father froze. "A what?" "A stakeholder," the owner repeated calmly. "She holds a significant financial and strategic interest in this establishment." The words settled like weight. Real. Undeniable. Daniel shook his head slowly, as if rejecting the concept entirely. "No, that doesn't make sense," he said. "This place, this entire restaurant, it's worth tens of millions." "Correct," the owner replied. "And she?" "Yes," he said, cutting him off gently. "She does." Silence again. But this time it was different. Not confusion. Not tension. Something deeper. Something closer to realization. My father leaned back in his chair, his expression no longer authoritative, but uncertain. "You invested here?" he asked me. Yes. When? A while ago. How much? I paused for just a fraction of a second. Not for effect. Just timing. Enough to matter. That answer echoed. Because it carried more truth than any number ever could. Jennifer, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. But how? She asked softly. Where did that kind of money even come from? I looked at her. Then at all of them. And for the first time that evening, I didn't hold anything back. I built it, I said. No one understood. Not fully. Not yet. I built something you never cared to understand. I continued. Something you dismissed before it even had a chance to exist. The owner stepped back slightly now, his role complete. But the impact? It remained. You mean your tech work? My mother asked hesitantly. Yes. That phase? Daniel added quietly. I met his eyes. It was never a phase. The weight of that sentence settled over the table. Heavy. Unavoidable. My father glanced around the restaurant again. But this time his perspective had changed. Completely. You brought us here, he said slowly. Yes. To show us this? No. I shook my head. I brought you here for dinner. That truth hit harder than anything else. Because it meant this wasn't a performance. Not revenge. Not validation. Just reality. Existing, whether they believed in it or not. The owner inclined his head one final time. If you require anything further, he said, I will personally ensure it is handled. Then he turned and walked away, leaving behind silence, and a table full of people, who no longer knew what to say. No one reached for their drinks. No one touched the food. The table, once filled with quiet judgment, now sat in absolute stillness. Not uncomfortable, but exposed. The kind of silence that forces people to confront something they've been avoiding for far too long. My father finally spoke, his voice lower than I had ever heard it. We thought you were struggling. There was no accusation in it anymore. Only realization. I know, I replied calmly. Daniel let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair. I offered you a front desk job, he said, almost to himself. At my clinic. A faint, humorless smile crossed my face. Yes, you did. And you didn't even react. I didn't need to. That landed. Not as an insult, but as truth. Jennifer looked down at the table, her fingers tracing the edge of her glass. I told you to update your LinkedIn, she murmured. You did. And all this time. She stopped, unable to finish the thought. My mother finally looked at me again. Really looked at me. Not through the lens of expectation. Not through disappointment. But with something she hadn't shown before. Awareness. You weren't lost, she said quietly. No. You were building something quietly while you were waiting for me to fail. I finished, not harshly, just honestly. She closed her eyes. Because she knew it was true. My father leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped together. Why didn't you push harder? He asked. Why didn't you make us understand? I held his gaze. Because belief isn't something you can force, I said. It's something people choose. And we didn't choose it, he replied. No, I said softly. You didn't. The weight of that moment settled deeply. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just undeniable. Daniel shook his head again, still trying to process everything. This place, your investment, your life, he said. We had no idea. I know. You could have told us. I did. That ended that argument. Completely. Because there was nothing left to defend. Nothing left to question. Only the truth, standing clearly in front of them. The waiter returned quietly, placing the main course on the table. Perfectly prepared. Perfectly timed. As if nothing had changed. But everything had. My father looked at the plate, then back at me. I told you this was a $40 million place, he said. Yes. And you just sat there. Yes. Knowing you owned part of it. Yes. He leaned back slowly, almost in disbelief. I don't understand how you stayed so calm. I allowed myself a small pause, then answered honestly. Because I've had this life for a while, I said. Tonight is just the first time you're seeing it. That sentence shifted something. Permanently. Because it wasn't about a sudden success. It wasn't about luck. It was about time. Time they hadn't paid attention. Time they hadn't cared to understand. Jennifer spoke again, her voice softer now. Are you happy? She asked. The question lingered. Because it was the first real question anyone had asked me all night. Not about money. Not about status. But about me. Yes, I said. And I meant it. Not because of the money. Not because of the recognition. But because I had built something that mattered. Something real. Something they couldn't reduce to a job title or a salary bracket. My mother nodded slowly, absorbing that. I wish we had seen it sooner, she whispered. Me too, I replied. But this is when you're seeing it. And that was enough. It had to be. Because the past wasn't something we could rewrite. Only something we could understand, differently. My father picked up his glass again, but this time his hand was steady. To you, he said quietly. No grand speech. No dramatic apology. Just 3 simple words. To you. Daniel hesitated, then lifted his glass as well. Yeah, he said. To you. Jennifer followed. My mother last. Their expressions had changed. Not completely. Not perfectly. But enough. Enough to mark the beginning of something new. I picked up my glass. Paused for just a moment. Then nodded slightly. Not in victory. Not in pride. But in acknowledgement. Of everything that had been said. And everything that hadn't. The glasses touched. Soft. Controlled. Final. Dinner continued after that. But the energy had shifted entirely. No more subtle insults. No more quiet judgments. Only careful conversation. Measured words. And something unfamiliar. Respect. Real respect. For the first time in years. And as I sat there, surrounded by the same people who once doubted me, I realized something important. This moment, it wasn't about proving them wrong. It never was. Because success isn't loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't demand validation. It simply exists, whether people choose to see it or not. And eventually, if it's real enough, they will.